How many of you remember marking maps back in school? It required precision, thorough knowledge of the globe, its countries, mountains, rivers and borders. Map marking wasn't everyone's cup of tea, so obviously people would make mistakes. But those mistakes were innocent and they were genuine. China's aren't. Earlier this week, China published this map, the 2023 edition of what's called the Standard Map. If you go by this map, China controls, China owns its Chinese territory all across the South China Sea. China supposedly also controls and owns parts of Russia and of India. Bizarre doesn't cut it. Look closely and you will see that China is trying to impose its imaginary 9-dash line, for example, on the world, except this time Beijing has added an additional dash, this one to the east of Taiwan, meaning Taiwan, part of China. Through this map, China is telling the world that everything within these 10 dashes belong to China. At least, so it claims. It also says that Arunachal Pradesh, an Indian state, belongs to China. Aksai Chin belongs to China. Outer Manchuria belongs to China. Look, obviously, it's all a lie. And this map is an imposition of a Chinese lie. It comes with the intention to provoke, to disrupt, and obviously to mislead, perhaps also to set up a certain negotiating position. Now, experts aren't entirely surprised with the timing of this particular provocation. The G20 summit is less than a week away. Pushing its agenda so close to a crucial event is typical of Chinese diplomacy. Come the 9th of September, leaders of the world's most powerful countries will be gathering in New Delhi. China would want to be omnipresent through conversations, although Xi Jinping, it seems almost certain, will not be there. Beijing would want countries to talk about China's continuous claims on these lands and these waters, its baseless claims. Now, either that's what China is trying to do, or Xi Jinping is just simply trying to be a disruptor. So before we go any further in the analysis, let's get some facts on the table first. These dashes that China likes to draw on the map have no legal basis. This is something the Permanent Court of Arbitration at The Hague has reiterated. It reiterated it in 2016. Arunachal Pradesh is a part and an integral part of India and always has been. There are people who live in Arunachal Pradesh who are proud Indians. All of them are proud Indians. They are members in the Indian central government, of the members of the cabinet out there, members of the Indian government out there who are from Arunachal Pradesh. Arunachal Pradesh is an integral part of India. Just go there, visit it and see it for yourself. Aksai Chin is India's too. Taiwan, we know all about One China policy, but for now, Taiwan is independent. Outer Manchuria is not China's. Just as large swathes of the South China Sea that China is reasserting its claim on ahead of G20 are not Chinese. The Philippines, Malaysia, Indonesia, Vietnam and Brunei claim these waters. This map is bogus at best. And let me put it to you very bluntly. This time, countries are sparing no words in criticizing this unnecessary stunt by China. India's External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar, called the Chinese claims absurd. New Delhi told the world that China's claims have no basis. The Philippines reiterated this. Manila released this statement, calling the Chinese map the, quote, latest attempt to legitimize China's purported sovereignty and jurisdiction over Philippines' features and maritime zones, highlighting that the map has no basis under international law. Act responsibly, the Philippines reminded China. Malaysia also dismissed China's unilateral claims, adding that Kuala Lumpur is, quote, consistent in its position of rejecting any foreign party's claims of sovereignty, sovereign rights and jurisdiction on Malaysia's maritime features. Taiwan was obviously furious. Let me read out what the Taiwan's foreign ministry spokesperson actually said. He said, no matter how the Chinese government twists its position on Taiwan's sovereignty, it cannot change the objective fact of our country's existence. With all of that having been said, China still wasn't done. On the 30th of August, China defended its map. Listen to this.
On February 28th, the Chinese Ministry of Land and Resources released the 2023 edition of its standard map. This routine practice is in accordance with China's exercise of sovereignty. We hope that the relevant parties will view this matter objectively and calmly and avoid overinterpretation.
When asked about the inspiration behind the extra creative dash, the spokesperson said, and I am quoting, China's position on the South China's issue has always been clear. The competent authorities of China regularly update and release various types of standard maps every year. Ironically enough, it was China's National Map Awareness Publicity Week, would you believe it? And China marked it by using this particular map as a tool of propaganda, something which countries have, of course, been doing since time immemorial. With this map, for example, China is trying to establish and stamp its alternate reality on the world. An alternate reality where Beijing actually controls 90% of the South China Sea, where it controls parts of India, Russia, Nepal, and all of Taiwan. So back to the timing of it all, you should be expecting a big diplomatic blowout of the G20. Well, perhaps not. Perhaps it won't even come up, because India doesn't want G20 to become about geopolitics. There are other major goals in the economic front and the developmental front that India wants to stress on. However, it is very possible that Xi Jinping was expecting some sort of a blowout, which is perhaps why Xi Jinping is likely to skip the summit. Instead, the Chinese Premier Li Qiang is going to be there in New Delhi representing China. So is Xi Jinping trying to be the talk of the town or the disruptor of the G20 summit? Well, all of that is perfectly possible. But, you know, maybe there's another more simple explanation. It's not that China is actually trying to disrupt G20 or there are any other grand plans like that. It's just simple. This is what China and Xi Jinping in particular just believes is the way the world should function. China has the ability and, for some reason in their own mind, the moral authority to be able to say, this is it, this is ours. It always has been ours, and you better learn to accept it. And if nothing else, that is certainly something that they will use on the negotiating table. Well, for more on this, joining us now, Ambassador Anil Wadhwa. He was former Secretary East in the Ministry of External Affairs, currently a distinguished fellow with the Vivekananda International Foundation. He's also former Indian ambassador to Belarus, to Italy, to Thailand, Oman, a large number of countries as well. Ambassador Wadhwa, it's such a pleasure actually, speaking to you. Lots of diplomatic activities taking place. Everyone's attention is on G20. What do you make of this latest provocation from China? I mean, Xi Jinping might not be coming, and then they put out this map, which is, well, bizarre to say the least.
So as far as the timing of releasing this map is concerned, the Chinese put out this map, what they call the standard map of Chinese territories, almost with regularity, almost every year or every 2 years. The regularity does not depend on, the timing does not depend on what is happening around the world. And this time again, it seems to be something similar. So as far as India is concerned, of course, it's disconcerting to note about what the Chinese have done once again, as far as the Arunachal Pradesh is concerned in particular. Aksai Chin also is a festering issue. But as far as the others are concerned, Taiwan, South China Sea, this time around, there's been much more of a reaction around the world. So if you look at the reaction from countries like, of course, Taiwan, but also from the Philippines and from Malaysia in particular, it's been Vietnam as well. So that reaction has come through much more strongly this year compared to the previous years.
So, Ambassador Wadhwa, you're correct in saying that there's been a lot of pushback this time from many countries, including countries like Indonesia and others who've spoken out. But what China essentially seems to be saying is that if at any time in history we think we had a claim on a piece of land, then that's it. it's ours. Why is it ours? Because we are saying it is ours. That's what, for example, they've been doing with the 9-dash line, saying, oh, there was some 1947 map. That's what they're doing with Arunachal Pradesh, with Tibet, on the basis of some notional sovereignty on Tibet itself, which actually, if you look at history, they didn't have through most of history. So all of these seem to be random stuff that they're putting out, and they seem to believe that because they believe they're the strongest power in this region, they can just impose their views on all of their neighbors. Would that be a fair way of summarizing what is actually happening here, what they're trying to do?
I think it's a combination of that, plus the fact that the Chinese believe that their historical claims take precedence over whatever else has come later on. In fact, if you look at the claim of India as far as McMahon Line is concerned, the Chinese, while they've settled the boundary question with Myanmar on the basis of the McMahon Line, but at the same time, they said that we don't recognize the McMahon Line as far as India is concerned. That's because it suits them to do so. And of course, the 9-dash line claim has come about much later, again, based on historical claims of Trung He's voyages in the 14th century, regardless of the fact that there's been a permanent court of arbitration judgment which has gone in favor of Philippines, and that has held the view that the 9-dash line is illegal because we've had the UNCLOS, which has gone into effect subsequently in the 1980s. So the Chinese don't seem to care about what comes afterwards, but they keep hoping, and I think that's a way of conducting business by laying claims to territory and then hoping that they would gain something out of it when negotiations take place.
Right, Ambassador Wadhwa, thank you so much for joining us, and let's all keep an eye on what's going to happen at the G20 next week. Thank you so much for being with us.